Today, we are going to be talking about a fantastic control champion inside the game, possibly one of the best, especially from an epic rarity, and we're going to talk about some use cases and things you want to know about this champion, and it is, of course, Neldor that we are talking about. So this guy is pretty fantastic. He is an epic champion from the High Elves faction. He is a Force Affinity champion, which makes him a little bit interesting for use, especially considering a lot of the content is still dominated by Magic Affinity champions. What makes him so good? Let's go ahead and hop into his A1. It's going to be Frost Piercer, which attacks 3 times at random, each hit having a 40% chance of placing a freeze. He is, of course, going to be doing damage based off of attack. That particular skill, so the A1 does have a 1.1 times attack multiplier, so all things considered, it's going to be a 3.3 times attack multiplier. Certainly nothing to write home about there. There are better skills out there for sure. A2, Dancing Razor attacks one enemy 4 times. The first and second hit have a 75% chance to place the big version of decrease attack. The third and fourth have a 75% chance to place the big version of decrease accuracy for 2 turns. And this is, of course, on a 3-turn cooldown. As you'll kind of see, a theme to this guy's kit is he has a lot of control. He's mainly made for, single target boss decimation, as we'll talk about a little bit later. And he does have a lot of multi-hits as well. And I forgot to mention it, but that particular skill, so the Dancing Razor there, has a 1.35 times attack multiplier on a 4 times hitter, which means that it's going to be strong overall according to the Hell Hades website. Now finally, we have Chromatic Cross, which attacks all enemies 2 times, each hit having a 75% chance of placing the big version of decreased speed, and it's also going to heal him by 30% of the damage dealt. Now if you're using this guy in any sort of wave content, with a lot of, enemies out there that he can be hitting, even if he's not expressly built for damage, this heal can still be pretty chunky, and it does have a 1.8 times attack multiplier, so just below a 4 times attack multiplier once you consider everything. So far, he looks to be a pretty decent champion, especially as far as control goes, but let's go ahead and take a look at his passive, which makes him truly next level. Cold-Blooded Drive. Whenever an ally places a freeze, this champion has a 30% chance to attack the target with their default skill. What makes this so good? Well, as we'll talk about later in the video today, he is of course going to be an absolutely fantastic champion for use inside Fire Knight Hard when he has the A1 where he's placing the freezes. Then, if you pair him with somebody else, so for example another Neldor, a Yakarl the Scourge, Creodan the Blue, or a champion that a lot of players will have, a Newt, he's going to have a chance to go ahead and attack with his A1 anytime somebody else like a Newt places a freeze. So this champion combined with one other freeze champion can be all you need for turn meter manipulation inside the Fire Knight. He is absolutely fantastic. Even outside the Fire Knight, I would say you can still get a lot of use out of him, especially in Faction Wars. I do actually use him there myself. Let's go ahead and take a look at Blessing. So I do have him, of course, built in Phantom Touch, which is going to have a 75% chance of inflicting bonus damage. Now, the damage that gets done by this is proportional to his attack, so it is actually pretty substantial, all things considered. If you're not going to run him inside Phantom Touch, a few other recommendations I'd make would, of course, as always, be Cruelty. This guy has some AoEs as well as multi-hitters. He's going to get those defense reductions up pretty quick. And then, of course, Nature's Wrath can be pretty effective for him as well, considering just the sheer amount of debuffs that he's going to have in his kit, of course. So overall, a lot of good blessing options for this guy. Crushing Ren could be okay, but he's not really a fantastic damage dealer, as we discussed. His multipliers aren't, crazy, and he doesn't have too strong a base stats for damage dealing either. Let's go ahead and take a look at his build, especially when it comes to the Fire Knight's Castle. So he is quite speedy, 40,000 HP, 4,000 attack, 2,600 defense, 253 on the speed, of course, 100% crit rate, 228 on the crit damage, 219 on resistance, and 388 on the accuracy. Now, for sets, you're really just wanting to build this guy fast, and of course, if you want to throw a little bit of damage on there too, you could focus on like Savage or something like that. By no stretch of the imagination is this gear, optimized. You can definitely get a more solid build on him. He essentially is in like my tier 3 or tier 4 gear, so nowhere near the top of what my account is capable of. As you can see, things are not even fully ascended or anything like that, and he still does pretty good work. So let's go ahead, and take a look here. Let's run him inside Fire Knight's castle. We do, of course, have an event going on currently for some extra boosts on stun gear there. Let me know down below. I'd be curious to hear if you guys are farming for stun. I know it's a set that I still struggle with a bit on my account. I don't have a whole lot of it inside my reserve, so I should probably be farming for it while I have the opportunity, essentially, and there are some tournaments and whatnot going on alongside it. The downside, though, is you have to use a certain faction, which is Demon Spawn specifically, I believe. This is the team that we're going with, though, so this is my Fire Knight Hard Auto team. I do use this to farm Stage 6, essentially is the highest tier that we can get. This is going to be the AI presets, if you're curious. I do have a guide on my YouTube channel as well, talking specifically about the presets for this, as well as the overall strategy for Fire Knight, so you can go ahead and basically just look for Fire Knight Guide on my channel, and you'll be able to find it pretty easily there. Now, importantly, on Wave 3, we do have him opening with the Chromatic Cross, because he is going to be going slow enough that the shield is going to be down by the time he gets a turn, so we want him to place that decreased speed. Then after that, he's only using the A1, and of course we have Newt just kind of doing Newt things there as well. Now let's go ahead, let's start the run here. We're not going to do super raids, of course. I do want to save my energy a little bit. You'll see even on the wave-based content, he is going to be very solid for essentially just getting freezes and control on the champions. Granted, we do also have Lady Mikage here, who's going to be probably just a little bit better at it, all things considered. Now, this is definitely a slow run because I haven't optimized it for speed or anything crazy like that. So we're going to be sitting probably about 6 to 7 minutes on average, I would say. I used to run this without Newt, and it was quite significantly slower than that. I do usually run it overnight, though, so I'm not too concerned about the speed of it, right? Like, I can just sort of let it run, and it doesn't really bother me, so it's not like I'm usually going to be sitting here and just watching it play through. Now, that being said, I will save you guys the pain of sitting here and listening to me ramble, so I'll just go ahead and cut back once we are at the boss. Now, we're at about 2.5 minutes in here so far, and we're about to go on to the third wave. While I was sitting here pondering life and my choices in it, I realized that I had forgotten to show you guys the masteries for this champion, so we'll actually do that after this run as well, since there is a couple of things there that I want to go over. So as you can see, essentially the way this run works is we're going to have Lady Mikage have everybody do an ally attack, and then we are actually going to have Farrakhan the Fat do an ally attack afterwards as well. So we get plenty of freezes going out from Newt, as well as Neldor on the initial wave there, which pushes back the turn meter enough that we can have Neldor go in with his A3, which is going to allow us to get that decreased speed, which then just helps us to essentially cycle the turns a little bit more proficiently. Now, something that is very nice about this champion is you'll notice on his A2 and his A3 where he has the debuffs to be placed, he does, of course, have a chance to do it on every single hit. So, for example, his A3 that has a chance to place the decreased speed, it's a 75% chance per hit, which means it's a very solid chance to be placed. But also considering that he's a Force Affinity champion, you still can get use out of him in Magic Affinity content, because if he weak hits on one of those hits, the chances are he's essentially going to go ahead and do a normal hit on the next one. So it is very nice that he has that built in. A lot of times, especially with an epic champion, you'll just see that they have a multi-hitter, but it's really only one hit has a chance to place the debuffs and those sorts of things, which basically just means, of course, that, you know, if they weak hit or it gets resisted or something like that, you're kind of screwed, right? So he is a bit unique in that regard. He is basically competing with this crowd control spot with somebody like a Creodin the Blue. Now, I thought Creodin was better until I got both of the champions and actually tested them out inside the Fire Knight, and I do have to say I do like Neldor a little bit better. And the reason for that is going to be his passive. So Neldor's passive, where he has a chance to team up and attack whenever somebody places a freeze, is absolutely fantastic, because then he's essentially just getting some extra free crowd control in there as well. So let's go ahead and talk about those masteries. So interestingly, I do bring him down to Fearsome Presence. So what this is going to do is this is going to increase the chance of placing a stun, sleep, freeze, fear, true fear, provoke, or sheep debuff from skills or artifacts by 5%. Now, if you'll remember, he has that freeze on his A1 at a 40% land rate, so this is essentially going to boost it up to 45%, which certainly helps out your odds a little bit, and it just removes some of that RNG. Alternatively, if you're not really too worried about those freezes landing every time, you can, of course, run him inside Giant Slayer. Every single skill he has is a multi-hitter, and then 2 of those 3 skills are hitting for 3 times or more. So Giant Slayer is essentially the way that you'd want to build him. You're going to get a lot of damage out of this guy if you do it, especially if you have ally attacks and stuff like that, like I do with the Fire Knight hard, but my preference at least was just to get those extra freezes and to remove some of that RNG element from it. And then of course I do also have him built out inside counterattack mastery, so during wave content and such, if somebody's placing CCs on me or hitting him hard or those sorts of nasty things, he essentially can just go ahead, counterattack, and potentially CC the enemy as well. In terms of use cases, you're going to be able to use this guy pretty much everywhere. I wouldn't necessarily recommend him for arena or anything like that. He's not really, built to do damage like we mentioned. Fire Knight's Castle, he's absolutely fantastic. Faction Wars, he's one of the best because he's bringing a little bit of damage. He's bringing a lot of crowd control as well as essential debuffs, of course, right? Campaign, he could certainly do it. Spider's Den with his decreased attack, decrease accuracy, and AoE decrease speed, he could be pretty fantastic as well. Arena offense, I think that's way too high of a rating. Hydra is useful for that AoE decrease speed as well. There's just so many areas you can use this guy. Certainly Insidious and Tranos as well. I've seen him pop up inside some waves, and he's been very, very helpful for my team to progress. That being said, let me know down below where you use Neldor, and if you prefer him or Creodin. I'd be very interested to hear the comments decision on that. That being said, though, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.